end of times or something. Hey,
Right.
welcome back, PowerHouse Fence Show family. Zach Shue.
Dan Turbyville.
We are in the house. Dude, we're on a podcast.
We are.
That's wild.
We
This
are.
is very cool.
And we're live.
We're live on the podcast.
Yeah. So, yep, there is a phone number scrolling up there. 901-878-4987. 901-878-4987.
Yeah, let's go. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Presented by MFC Manufacturing, Memphis Fence Company, Simpalo, and the Thornton Fence Consulting Group. FenceConsultingGroup.com. www. I don't think you have to say that anymore. Y'all know what it is. Ain't that right?
Yeah.
It's the internet. It's been around for quite some time.
A while now.
That's
even.
right. So we are live.
Yeah, we're live. We're doing it. So we got all the sponsors done. We're here. We're in the studio.
Yeah.
So have you...
Same stuff.
Same stuff. No new books, no new listening things, none of that stuff. I too don't really have anything exciting to add to that.
Yeah.
I've been listening to some podcasts and stuff, but nothing that's nothing earth shattering or...
You've been listening to conservative Christian rap. Is that...
Yeah.
Is that what that was?
So I just connected my phone to the Rodecaster and I just go to the music app and hit play on whatever's there to test it.
Yeah.
And it was some conservative rap guy talking about how vaccines were population control and all this. So
yeah,
Zach's been having fun with that.
Yeah, he didn't have any style at all. Just to the point.
Right.
I don't like vaccines because they're bad for you.
Right.
And prospectively give your kids Alzheimer's or autism or whatever.
Yeah, autism. Yeah.
What a weird type of music. What a weird genre. I never heard that before.
It exists. So anyways, I don't think I don't know, listeners, if that's what you want to hear about, let us know. And I can really
make a whole show on that.
I can get deep off in the whole
conspiracy rap genre. I like this
rabbit hole.
It's new to me, and I like things that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
So I was
cool.
Make poking fun, which I might still, but I enjoy just listening to what's out there.
Right.
So we got some events coming up. Thornton's Fence Business Conference in December. That's December 2nd through the 4th at the Hilton Promenade in Branson, at Branson Landing in Branson, Missouri.
Have you ever heard promenade? Is that the dance?
That's probably the same word.
It's just
we may have converted it to modern English from King's English.
I have to tell you something that I find super interesting, and I haven't told you, and I'm sorry that I'm telling you here live on the air.
Oh no!
So I saw this person posted a Bible for sale on the Facebook Marketplace. Okay. And so it caught my attention because it's $2,000.
Wow!
And I was like, "What in the world?" And so I look at it, and the date on it is like 1663.
That's cool.
And so what was interesting to me was, Jesus, Jesus. So on the Bible, it was JEFUS. And so I thought that was really weird. And I started looking, and everywhere that there was an S in a word, it was an F instead. And so it was like, I don't know, like His Royal Highness or whatever. And so Highness, that ends with two S's, right? So like the S before the end was an F, and then the last one was an S. And so I know a guy who's learning Hebrew,
right,
in order to read the Bible in the original Hebrew. And so he told me that in like ancient Greek, they had some letters that were different if they were in the word or at the end of the word.
Oh,
and
nice.
That was an example, and that was being exhibited there. So even when they translated it to English, it still was a different letter in the middle of the word versus the end of it. So depending on where the S landed, it determined whether it looked like an F or looked like an S. So
still pronounced S,
I guess. I don't know. I think so.
Wow, that's been our etymology lesson with Dan.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
We have tool time with Dan. We have Italian of the word of the week with Ilaria, and now we've entered into a new segment of the show, Etymology with Dan.
Yeah, don't expect too many of those. That's like the one I have.
I'm
So
going to dumb it up some. Etymological findings. Etymological findings with Dan Turberville.
all right, so we're going to the Hilton Promenade.
Yes.
And then FinStech in 2025, I guess, will be the one after that. So it's actually, I believe, I looked, and I think it's like in late February. It's like around February 24th or something like that. So a little different, a month later than it was this year. So anyways, that's all I have. You have anything else to add to that?
Man.
Oh, okay.
What's happening? These shows sure are getting creepy. Yeah, wow, we just got back and now we got to turn around and pack again.
I know, it's crazy. As soon as one is over,
what
man,
a problem to have.
You got to like start planning the next thing. I actually looked, and there was about 8 events that I was like, man, I wouldn't mind going to that throughout the course of the rest of this year.
Yeah, 1 a month.
It's crazy.
Well, 8 for the duration of this year.
For the rest of the year.
Ooh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah. So, what's I can't remember what it's called. Dan Wheeler was talking about it. It's the like an ag fence show.
Cool.
People listening will probably know the name of it, and I'm sorry that I don't, but it looked really interesting. We don't do a bunch of ag fence, but I thought it would be cool to go see. And just other things like that out there. But
let's get into this Simpalo story of the week.
I don't have too much of an exciting story, but I did. I sent a list of features and things like that I wanted to add to the developers.
Yes.
And I was like, hey, I want to make sure all this stuff is developed, tested, and deployed before we get to FinStech next year. Tried to hire an in-house developer, went through this whole thing with one dude. It kind of fell apart. And so now I had to back up and punt and outsource the development to the same team that built it. But anyway, so I don't really want to get into the new features. I don't want to disclose that yet. But
right. So that's good. We've got some stuff in the works. I've been doing the same thing I always do. I could tell the story I told last week.
Right.
But, that's about it.
Yeah.
I've been making use of the copy offense line.
Yeah. Duplicating
feature.
it.
Yep. Yeah. Duplicating in order to change. I had one job that had like 6 different options on it.
Yep.
And it was for me, it was all the same, basically the same product. The options was just the layout. So, copying, then changing, and then changing the product. And, it did make it easier to do.
Yeah, it does.
So I was able to duplicate those 6 versions and make material lists pretty quick.
Yeah.
So,
I've been working on building a vinyl product in there for like vinyl privacy fence. I want to build an ag fence product. So if anybody that listens to this knows a lot about ag fence and you're willing to like participate, just let me know. And I'd like to try to get that built and added in there. I booked some consulting stuff as a result of people that I met talking about Simpalo. So that's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
I was hopefully we'll be able to help them out with a few little things, nothing major,
Now it's time for tool time. Dan the Tool Man, Turbyville.
I see.
I almost called you Dan the Tool Man Taylor.
Craig Eubanks here.
Say that probably. We just got sued.
What's up, Craig?
Hello, Craig. Welcome, sir.
Yeah. So I don't know what tools to really talk about anymore, but one thing that's happened this week is I've really come to the realization that like a new truck suck. Right.
I think 3 weeks ago, we're like, we're buying all new equipment because having old equipment sucks.
Yeah. So I don't know what to do. Please help us.
I'd like to. Yeah, I drive a 2021 Ford Ranger, my Memphis Fence Company vehicle, and it's been in and out of the shop for most of this year for a transmission problem that no one seems to know what to do about. Our most recent trip to the shop, they sent me home with it and said, Ford wants us to open the transmission again to add a part, but we don't know when that part will be available. We have zero estimate at all. So good luck, sir. Good luck to you.
So, well, they put a torque converter in it first, right?
They did put a torque
So
converter.
it sat for like 6 months waiting on that part.
8 months.
That's crazy. And now they want to open it again to replace a part, but they have no idea when we'll ever have the part.
So this time they at least sent us back with the truck instead of just keeping it.
Yeah, just drive it till it falls apart.
Well, they said that what they think it is, it shouldn't fail.
Mm.
So it just drives weird.
Yeah.
The transmission is like a teenager learning to drive a manual.
Nice.
So my transmission doesn't know how to shift, basically.
So Kenny has a 2024 F-150.
Right.
And I think it's in the shop right now for like the third time, and it's 20,000 miles.
And it's like a fuel oxygen mixture, some kind of a fuel sensor, like exhaust sensor, fuel air combo kind of thing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you would just put a new O2 sensor in.
Well, yeah.
Or whatever.
Right.
Know?
Yep.
So I don't want to be the guy that's back in the day we used to have carburetors and we didn't have this newfangled.
So speaking of carburetors, so I drive a 2023 F-150.
Yeah.
And so my truck has had a little wrench pop up on it like 2 or 3 times, and it says service vehicle soon. Well, it's not an oil change, right? The oil life is good and all of that. And you get a little app that's connected. And so it tells me that there's a powertrain or 4-wheel drive system fault. And as soon as I turned the truck off and turned it back on, the wrench was gone. Well, it did it the other night on the way home. And so, I mean, again, I'm like, oh, there that thing is. Like, if it'll ever do it consistently, I can take it to the shop and let them fix it. And sure enough, the next morning, got up, went outside, hit the button in the truck, and it just went and wouldn't start. And so I got out of that truck. I have we have my wife's old vehicle, a Ford Escape that we keep as like our third backup that either of us could use. Went to it, the battery was dead. Nice. So then I went to number 3 in the roster and got in my old F-150 that is carbureted and has no computers or anything else. It just starts when you tell it to. And it started up, and so that's what I've been driving.
Started right up.
8 miles per gallon.
I drive a 2015 F-150, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
it's trucking along.
Yeah. And I call it truck.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what the deal is with this stuff. We do have 2. Do you know what year those 2 F-550s are? 21, 22?
22, I think. Yeah.
Something like that.
They're doing pretty good.
So far, knock on wood, like they've been pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, we broke the glass out.
Yeah, right. And I think maybe one mirror or something like.
But that's that's us. That's right. Not the truck. So those are doing good.
Yeah,
those are solid.
Yeah, so they're going on. I don't know if it's like maybe the diesel stuff is a little more reliable right now. I don't know. We did have a Chevy as well, and that Chevy had to have a motor put in it every 50,000 miles. And so people were like, "Oh, give up on Ford." And I mean, that Chevy didn't really treat us any better. I don't know what to do, but anyways, it sucks, and it's just a part of our life.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Now it's time for my favorite time. Italian word of the week.
Ilaria learns the buttons.
There she is. Welcome, Ilaria. How have you been?
I'm being good.
We haven't seen you in a while. Like a week.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Ilaria. Yeah. Thanks for joining us on the show.
So, of course. The Italian word of the week is exhibit.
Esibizione.
Esibizione.
No, esibizione.
Esibizione.
Yes.
I can't even stop laughing.
It's a funny word.
Esibizione.
Yeah, no, that was good actually.
Yes.
Look at that.
Yes. Last night we found it entertaining to try to say a funny word while looking someone else in the eyes. And it's impossible.
Yeah, I believe that.
I mean, no one could do it. So that was the family challenge of the evening, was say something kind of funny while keeping a straight face, looking the other person directly in the eyes. And it's
if someone told me to say something funny and was like, here's $100. If you say something funny, you will get this. I don't know that I could do it.
Well, not something funny. We just chose a word that sounds weird, like esibizione. I mean, that's a funny sounding word.
It is.
See, she laughs when I say the word, and it Maybe because the way I say it.
Right. So
that word you said means I'm an idiot.
yeah. Well, some of them are pretty obvious, right? But I wonder how many words she's given us that are wrong.
I'm actually way too nice, and I haven't done that yet, but I will.
I think you should. I think really from here on, for the next 4 weeks, just prank us with the Italian.
So my 2-year-old daughter, you said that you had to look him in the eye. She goes, "No, look me in my eye."
Wow.
And so she's
a little mob boss.
She is. And so last night this morning maybe, there was a beetle in the garage, and she was like, "Bug," and then she goes, "No, look me in my eye," and she stomped on the bug. I was like, "Golly,
Feral.
yeah, she's crazy,
little savage."
Yeah. All right, man. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Yeah. All right.
This has gone on long enough.
So let's do this. So last week we talked a bit about this insurance debacle that we had going on.
We did.
And so it was like, just to kind of recap, we were required to provide primary non-contributory coverage. And so that endorsement, because of our liability insurance, that endorsement cost us $350 per project per year. And so the way that the contract was written, we had to provide coverage basically for the duration of the project, plus I think 5 years after. And so it was going to be like something between $2,450 and $2,800 for that endorsement for this job. And it's a $6,500 job. And so
you do the math.
Right.
Right. If you want to see me do the math, watch the last episode.
Right. So there's a little recap, right? For anyone who missed last week. If you want to know all about it, go back.
I have a question.
Okay.
About something that occurred in the office this week that was pertaining to insurance. Would you care to expound on that?
Maybe.
We were required to have an endorsement on a B2B job that was like a smallish job. Again, a similar thing.
Same thing.
Oh, that was this job?
Nope. Different job, but same thing.
Same insurance.
Yep.
Okay, because I asked. I was like, I heard the story. I was like, was it the primary non-contributory? Esibizione. And they're like, I don't know what the words you just said are, but I think so,
Yeah.
Okay, so same thing. It happened again.
Yep, same thing. And that was in the...
But luckily, this project was going to be small, and so we would only really incur the cost, presumably, of $350, maybe.
So that project, I read the terms and conditions of the purchase order, and that project requires that we maintain coverage for 3 years after completion of the job. Right. So now we're in that kind of like weird, we either have to do it 4 or 5 times.
Last year, we were dealing with having to get a supplemental policy to expand our umbrella. That was like the request that I saw a bunch. That's something that I've run across a good bit.
So we have a pretty big umbrella.
Right.
And sometime in the past few years, we've increased our umbrella. So we have a pretty big general liability and umbrella, those policies. And that's the reason why the endorsement is $350. So for like a $1 million general liability policy, I mean, it would be cheaper than what we're paying.
Right.
But it's been something that occurs more and more. Right. And now it's like, I don't know, maybe we missed it. Maybe it slipped by. I didn't know anything about it. I'm not sure. But to my knowledge, this was the first job that we've kind of gone to battle in the business to business world over this primary non-contributory stuff.
And the result was the general contractor decided to waive that portion of the contract.
So in the $6,500 general contractor job, they waived the requirement from the contract, but they specifically said this one time. They said, so moving forward, be prepared to provide this coverage on any job that you bid to us, even if it's a, $2,500 job, be prepared to provide this coverage. So
I just heard our closing rate just plummet.
Yeah. Which already, so I sent our closing rate stuff to Tony the other day, and it's freaking sucking this year anyways.
And I talked to a general contractor, a local general contractor, and they were kind of like, yeah, me too. How's business? Y'all staying busy? And my initial response is always, heck yeah, doing. And you know what? No,
Actually, no.
not really.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I mean, but it's kind of like that. Hey, how's your day going? You say,
Right.
yeah, it's good, and then you're like, oh wait,
Yeah.
you're legitimately asking me,
Right. Oh,
to
you
kind of-
really want to know?
to
Well,
kind of poll the audience or whatever.
sit down and let me. I think I had that conversation with somebody. They're like, "Hey, how's it going?" I was like, "Are you just being pleasant, or do you actually want me to tell you?"
See, as someone who is not from here, I had to learn people don't care when they're asking how's it going, and I don't have to tell them
No, it's
actually
kind
how
of-
I'm going.
Yeah.
How it's going. Yeah.
You don't have to tell them how
took me
you're.
3
You don't have
years.
to tell them anything. It's basically like hello.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say,
I just say hi.
right.
Hey, how's it going? Hi.
I still
Yeah.
sick too. Good. You?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing that us humans do, right? That's our weird interaction is that we ask each other these questions, but neither of us really want to hear about it.
Hey, how's business? How's your closing rate? Hi.
Well, let me tell you, I ran this analysis the other day and I looked at 3 years worth of data and da 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 da, and then they just fall over because they passed out. Yeah, that's what would happen. Anyways, so what were we talking about?
We're talking about the end of that segment of the show.
Oh, we're done with
We're
the
moving
insurance stuff.
Yeah, we're moving into something new. I wanted to expound on that a little bit, and I guess just to kind of bring back that we've had it's recurring.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
this may be a beneficial topic for people who are learning to navigate that portion of commercial business. And the most recent one was business to business. This
Yep.
wasn't to a general contractor.
Yeah, which
So-
is pretty rare in the business to business
Right.
world as of right now, anyways. But I think we've talked about it before. When you get into like this corporate America world, like some of the weird requirements and stuff that you see from general contractors rolls over into corporate America.
right.
I mean, you get a lot of customers that are just like, yeah, I'll sign your contract and come do the work. And then you get other
like
ones.
a handwritten PO on a piece of paper or whatever, and it's like meet with Steve and put the fence up.
Yep. And so it kind of just depends, like in that business to business world, who you're working for. I heard Kenny earlier talking about how make sure that you plan to go through that safety course, and you're going to have to do this and do that to even be able to get on site to work.
Right.
So I mean, he was talking to one of our subcontractors about some business to business job that again is some corporate type thing.
Cool.
So my instructions, and viewers, if you care to listen. My instructions internally were, okay, so now when we bid a job, we put a line item on the proposal that says, here's how much it costs if primary non-contributory insurance coverage is required for your project.
Yeah, we're adding more and more exceptions to the
Right.
exclusions to the proposal.
Right.
There's now there's a line item for bid bonds not included, or that's the only one currently. But to add this primary non-contributory, we're gonna have a whole list of options. It's gonna be like a menu.
Yep. Yeah. Right. It's a la carte.
Which we talked about that bidding or building out proposals in that way already. Like I mean, and that's something I've just started doing all the time. Just break it out.
Yeah. I very rarely get to send a proposal that has one price on it.
I used to combine it in hopes that they would just go for it. Kind of, it's like I'd like that little, 20% margin on the automation or whatever the heck it is, That's a figurative number, by the way, but you know what I'm saying? Just
right.
I'd like that little bit of markup on a subcontractor, but now and when they come back and ask you for it broken down, it's easier just to go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Yep. And I've also kind of even like along those same lines with some specific sites, when I'm bidding to general contractors, I just now by default put everything in unit prices. Because I know that's the way that if we sell the job on that site or for that owner, I know that's what they're going to require.
Sure. Especially in circumstances where it's kind of sight unseen and the quantities are subject to change, which they quite often are in that circumstance.
Yep. So as you bid stuff and as you do jobs for people, you just kind of get a feel for like what certain people want and what you expect to do in certain situations, I guess you could say, and just kind of fill it out and go for it. So
we're kind of talking about process a little bit, which is a good lead into talking about implementing some new receiving processes. I recognized some fault there or room for improvement, I'll say, in the current system, and mostly through error.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, how else do we typically find out our system's not working real well? And it's like, where's the material?
Yeah.
The shipping ticket's here, and
Mhm.
I can't find the material. When did it get here? Where is it? Who offloaded it? And we have basically our current system is a clipboard with a copy of 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 some kind of a table that was printed maybe from Excel, maybe it's hand drawn, who knows, with a bunch of scribbles on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might be lucky enough to be able to decipher your PO. The details, not so much. I, as far as I've gone with that system, was to say, you need to be filling this out, and a stern request to print the name of the recipient. At
Please.
least that way I can address them when I have the shipping ticket in my hand. Like, who the heck unloaded this and where did you put it?
And please try your best to make it where we can actually read it.
Right. So I wrote that even on the form, and it is like, I don't know when the last time you looked at it was, but it's just a wiggle. It's just a consistent wiggle throughout the whole page. So, but it's hard to implement new things. You wrote the word, we are working on implementing a new receiving process. Currently, we're designing a new receiving process.
Yeah.
The implementation part will take bigger sticks, I think.
Well, and I think the key word of all of that is working.
Right.
Right. We're working on it. We're
not to be pessimistic, but it does take people time to adjust to a new process.
Yep. So, moral of that is you got to be really patient, and you got to be consistent, and you got to be persistent.
Right. And that's definitely something I've been learning with certain processes I'm trying to implement with management of the shop and how that works, is that you can extend a form to a person to assist them in satisfactorily doing their job, but you still have to follow up on the completion of said form, right? Just so I can propose to you a few ideas, simple ideas of what quantity did we produce today? How was the quality? Are there any quality concerns? And then a quick safety check: is people wearing their PPE, and are there cords that need repaired, or there's a piece of material 25 feet long stretched across the shop that's a trip hazard that needs to be picked up out of the floor. I can introduce these ideas, and over time they'll learn. That's the idea, right? That through filling out the form over and over, it becomes ingrained in part of the process.
Yeah. And that was the same concept as like a checklist, right?
Right.
So what are the things that you need to take out with you to go install fence today? You need post hole diggers, you need concrete, like, all of those kind of like simple things that you don't really think about. So that was something that you did a year ago,
right?
Was make a checklist and give it to the installers, and like, here's all the things that you need to make sure you have.
And then the expectation is extended to them to continue this process without my aid. So here's a stack of checklists before you leave the office or the shop. This is the walkthrough you need to do, an inspection of sorts. For your day.
Once you've been doing that for like 3 weeks, don't freaking call me and tell me you forgot something on that checklist.
I think it helped.
Yeah.
They just didn't call me and tell me they forgot anything.
Right. They just figured out how to get it done without that thing.
Don't call him. He told us not to call.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, I have faith in this process. So what you started working on, we had like a powwow, brainstorm in the middle of the showroom / entryway, and everyone kind of poured out some, here's what's wrong, what are we going to do? And I mean, the building of the Monday board that was going to assist in doing this, well, a good chunk of it's partially done because we're already tracking POs there. So the data is being collected, at least from the front end. The receiving, the requesting end, but the receiving end is where we're lacking.
So let's pause for a second and explain the process that we're building.
Ooh.
Right. So as Zach just said, we currently have all of our purchase orders go into Monday.
What's she laughing at?
Hey, she was laughing at the fact that nobody calls, I think. So since you mentioned her, her is Alyssa, my wife. She was laughing on here. And so she texted me and said, I hear more about your life from the podcast than through you talking to me. I was like, oh, sorry. So, anyways, maybe she texted it to me, so I didn't put it on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. Anyway, so the system purchase orders go into Monday.
That's
and
right.
when we put them into Monday, so there's a purchase order number, there's a vendor, there's a job, there's all this stuff. I think we
Copy
should
of the quote.
I think we should do a whole episode talking about, or at least at some point in an episode, we should talk about job numbers and purchase order numbers and like the importance of doing those things. So
Sure.
but anyways, in Monday, yeah, so we'll put like some sort of document, whether, I mean, it might be an Amazon receipt, it might be the quote we got from a supplier. Like we try to have some kind of supporting documentation to go along with the purchase that we made. So what we're going to do now is there's going to be another area, they call them boards on Monday, that is a receiving board. And so people that are unloading the truck will have access to this receiving board
Via a tablet.
Yep. And
so essentially a kiosk.
Right.
Ultimately.
And so when we enter a purchase order that is going to be unloaded off of a truck, there's a little button on I've like built one version of this on my own PO board to test it. There's a little button on there. When you click it, it creates a thing on the other board, and that'll like show the people unloading the stuff, the purchase order number, the vendor, stuff like that. So something really basic, but they can then go in there and they can add the pictures to it. If there's any kind of problem, something was damaged, something didn't show up, whatever, there's an area they can put that information in. And now we have actual pictures, right? So that's where this whole thing started, was to be able to have pictures.
Right.
And then they can change the status to like, there's something problematic, or if it's received in full or whatever it is, they can change the status and it'll notify the person that ordered it. So kind of in a nutshell, like the process that we're working on building. But it actually, so if you remember, it started, we ordered a job from Ameristar.
Mm-hmm.
And well, a job that was Ameristar, not from Ameristar, but we received it inspired by Ameristar. Yeah. So we received it, and the installer came to pick it up, start going through it and everything, and there was some of the parts were missing. And so I called and I was like, hey.
Which that was you kind of grazed over that. That was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
He was ready. He was here. He had trailer in tow and a labor and
subcontractor.
Right. With all his shit ready to show up and do the job today. And we're scrambling, and the whole company ends up involved in this. Well, all the ones who are here on site during the day, right, that aren't in the field. And I mean, what a waste of company resources,
right?
And not to mention the detriment it causes to the relationship. Luckily, this subcontractor has worked with us for a while and is pretty understanding. We had another job for him to be able to go to, so that helped out. However, man.
Yes, indeed, Alyssa. That material was delivered 3 weeks prior to him coming to pick it up.
Yes. So, that was a big cluster, man. Something you don't want to happen. And a lot, like I mentioned, a lot of people's time were allocated to looking and calling and finding out and figuring out. And ultimately, when it came off the truck, it wasn't inspected.
Yep. And so I'm not advocating for the old system, and I'm not saying that what we had was good enough by saying this, right? But I will say that if you've never seen an Ameristar Matrix Alpha material list, it is pretty confusing.
Right.
And they use a lot of part numbers, and the descriptions are not written in a way that's easily understood. Okay. So there is that piece of it, which makes me a little bit forgiving for the guy that unloaded it. However, this particular item that was missing was marked as being 24 foot long, and there was clearly nothing unloaded that was 24 foot long. So like, I'm kind of torn a little bit, right? It is confusing to read, but it does say 24 foot long. So,
sure. So here arises the need for a new system. And
Well,
how is this guy going to know what he's offloading? Hence the new board we're implementing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at least he can see. So we changed our purchase order numbers to reflect the person that ordered it, right? In order, so that way, if whoever's unloading has a question, they can easily figure out who ordered that material instead of having to do this same thing that Zach was talking about, where everyone in the company has to be involved in it, right? So narrows down who they can go ask. And so, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, man, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So
So
this is not a new idea. I mean, I don't think what we're doing, it's new for us, and people may be listening thinking, you big dummies, we've been
Yeah.
doing this shit for centuries.
Right.
My grandpa did this with a Polaroid or whatever.
I told someone today, I said, we've been unloading material off of trucks for over 50 years. How
It's
do
a
we not
giant
know how
piece
to
of
do
our
it?
business.
Right. Everything we install comes off of a truck. How do we not know how to unload a truck and make sure we receive the right material? But so we wanted pictures.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
because that's what Ameristar's investigation was, they take pictures of everything that goes onto the truck. And so they went back and looked at their pictures and they figured out, well, it actually was loaded on the truck, but it was unloaded at the stop before us. So it never made it to us. But I was like, wait a minute. That's a brilliant idea. Why don't do this? Why do we not just snap a picture? And so, that's why the pictures are going to be able to be added into the board on Monday.
I think the only times we've really done that is if we go out there and the material looks bad.
Yeah. If there's a problem.
We'll take pictures so we can say this is unacceptable.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, but I mean, normally when we do that, we refuse the shipment anyways. So we just send them the pictures so that they see it like 20 minutes before the truck gets back there.
Sure.
Which is interesting. But I would like to give a big shout out to Ameristar because they I called our supplier and I was like, hey, I don't have this part. It's not anywhere. Yeah, sure. We signed the ticket that we got the material. We went to install it. We figured out today it wasn't there. Da 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 da. And so the supplier contacts Ameristar, and I mean, it's like they immediately dove off into that thing, started going through all of their pictures for the loads that they sent out that day. I'm sure they have a catalog some sort of way that doesn't make it too hard. And the material, they figured out what happened. They said, nope, you're right. It was on the truck. It got unloaded at the stop before you. It never made it to you. And we're going to send it to you again. And I mean, super quick.
Yes.
And the material was sent to us again way quicker than I expected. So
it makes you wonder.
Right. It was already just sitting down the street. It showed up 30 minutes later. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, that's assuming they sent the same stuff, but initially the lead time was like 12 weeks. And then all of a sudden.
But not all of the components have that lead time, right?
No,
just some of them.
I'm just goofing off.
Yeah.
So again, it's pretty problematic for the subcontractor to be stuck in this limbo where we don't know what we got or when we got it or if it's here, and he's helping us look and he's frustrated. But in addition to that, there's another piece of this wherein we'd committed to the contractor to be on site that day.
Yep.
Right?
That's
on
right.
a pretty time sensitive project.
That's right. Yep. So, well, so I mentioned, well, just pause that for 1 second. So I mentioned today that I was like, hey, this story is funny to me. So I want to make sure that we squeeze it in here. So I mentioned that I was talking to somebody today and I was like, man, we've been unloading trucks 50 years. We still can't figure out how to do it. So here's what happened. We got a shipment of windscreen that was going on a temporary fence job, right? It was 600 feet of windscreen, comes in 50-foot rolls. So 12 50-foot bundles or rolls or whatever you want to call it. And so it's unloaded off the truck. They go out to start installing it today. And they said, oh, there's not 12 bags of windscreen on here. They said, there's only 4. And I was like, what in the world? And so I asked the guy that unloaded, I was like, man, did you not count it? Oh, no, man. I just took the pallet off the truck. Oh, my goodness. And I mean, that was one that was not excusable, right? Because it's one pallet that had windscreen sitting on it. Like you could have easily counted that stuff. But anyways, so we scramble around, get some more windscreen, go pick it up, send a guy out to deliver it. The guy pulls up to deliver the windscreen. And he says, "Hey, what's in that bag right there?" "Oh man, these are the 4 bags of windscreen." "Why are 2 of them massive?" What do you mean?" And so come to find out there were like 2 bulk packs that had 5 pieces of windscreen per bag. And so they portrayed it as if they only received 4 50-foot pieces, which it turns out they actually did get all 12 of them.
Wow.
And so that was even worse of a giant cluster
Sounds like
because
these guys need to make use of my pre-install checklist.
or something. I was
Right?
like,
I mean,
how does this happen? Right? It's crazy. So, anyways, back to the Ameristar job.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was a pretty time sensitive job. And indeed, we had already committed to the contractor that we were going to be there, man. And so you know how that goes.
Yeah, I don't like those calls.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Nobody likes that crap.
And it's weird because some people, like, there's two different types of people, I think. Well, I don't know about two different types. I've experienced these two types wherein there's one guy I'm working with and he doesn't really care to have an excuse.
Mm,
He just wants to know the details. Like, I'm not coming and when will I be there next? Like what and
yeah.
not why, what happened, what the process. And then I got another one that's like, well, why not?
Right.
Well, what happened?
Right.
And you never really know who that person is, right? Like, because I don't want to give too many details to the guy who doesn't really care about the details.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to give the guy not enough details and look like a total shit show to the guy who wants details, right?
Right.
So it's like, and that's an interesting game to play, you know. And obviously, I don't like not go to bed at night because I was like, oh crud, I gave the guy who doesn't care too many details. But I like to learn, and you mentioned the way that you offer proposals to particular people and trying
Mm-hmm.
to learn what they expect from you, and in that way, you know. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just something that I think about.
We want to give the people what they want.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, some people want you to tell them here and why and how,
Yeah.
and some people think that's just an excuse and don't give me all that shit. Just tell me when you'll be here. You know?
So you reminded me of this residential customer that I've encountered several times when we did that. And it wasn't the same one. It was just the same type. It was the customer that
Yeah.
wanted to tell you how to either install fence or run your fence company.
Nice.
And that was always super exciting to me. If you're an expert at installing the fence, like, well, one, you could have like explained to us how you wanted it installed, and
Right.
we would have, went through that process on the front end. But it was always exciting when they came back and they're like, "Well, why'd you do it this way? You should have been doing it like this all along." And the reaction I always had is I want to be like, you know what? If you're so good at installing fence, why don't you just do it yourself? But yeah,
That
But we
doesn't
can't
really
do that.
earn.
We don't do that.
No,
no,
that
no.
doesn't earn customers or repeat business or referrals or anything.
And it doesn't help me sleep at night.
Good
But like
point.
that is the initial reaction that I always kind of like,
Now that earns you the opportunity for an apology,
right?
which I like that even less.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty funny that we mentioned that there was a subcontractor who was here to get the material. So this particular subcontractor, he does a pretty good job at coordinating with superintendents and stuff like that when he's doing an install.
right.
And so I was talking to him and I was like, "Hey, so you're going to call him? We'll call him Bob. His name's not really Bob." I was like, "So you going to call Bob or what?" And he's like, "I ain't calling Bob. You lost your mind." I don't want to call him and tell him that we're too stupid to figure out we don't have the right material. What am I going to say? He's like, I'm going to call and tell him I broke my leg.
Right.
And so this particular superintendent, he's a bit of a wound up kind of tight fella, And so I really thought the conversation was going to be painful with him. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I got to do something to earn my keep today. And so I called up Bob, and it actually wasn't that bad. And I just told him, I was like, hey, some of the material we need to start, we actually didn't get. And I don't know when it's going to be here yet, but I do have distributor, supplier, whatever, and manufacturer. They're all working on it. We're trying to figure out a good solution for you. And as soon as we get something, I'll let you know. But yeah, it It's one of those things I won't say you always, but a lot of times you think those conversations are gonna be worse than they actually are.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying about issue, just generally issues with the project.
Yeah.
I had something. Actually, it was yesterday. I
Mhm.
believe was that yesterday. The same, or either way, the same subcontractor, the job that he went to instead of the one that we didn't have the material for.
Right.
And there was what seemed like a complication, and immediately I went to, oh no, we're gonna have to rebuild every single fence panel, and that's definitely where I was at,
Oh,
and
I don't know about this issue.
yeah, well, it's not really an issue. I went and looked at it; it wasn't a big deal. It's
No.
like, oh, okay, not a big deal, but I sure was ready to have to report I made them all wrong, you know. Um,
That's a terrible feeling too. Same as
so
me wanting to react to the customer that, well, if you know so much, you go build the fence. Like that's also the reaction. Oh my goodness, we're gonna have to start from scratch.
right,
So
so yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought, but yeah, man, it's easy to get like the knee jerk response is like, oh crap. I mean, and I come up with a lot of scenarios of how it's going to end or what I need to do now or ways to cheat the solution or whatever. But then ultimately, I think we've resolved a lot. We with coming with a lot of mistakes, you learn to resolve all kinds of problems and conflict pretty
right.
easily, right? And I think like
Mark
so
Harris.
my initial
Nope.
my initial response is kind of like, "Oh crap," and I'm gonna run away or hide or somebody else can take over or whatever that is. And then after a few moments, I'm like, "Oh, I remember all the things that we've walked through that were more or less difficult than this or
Yeah.
worse problems than this." And that's I think that's it. I think we've talked about that part being part of the allure of this business is like solving the problems and that like
Solving the riddles as people like to call them.
sure. And maybe that heightened level of excitement and whatever that flush of, you know, endorphins or whatever comes with getting angry and frightened simultaneously and
Yeah.
having to navigate through all that only on the other side to be like,
That like
we did it.
massive giant oh crap, like the weight of the world suddenly crushes you. Yeah, that's what we live for, right?
Right. Yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
there's a guy named Alan Watts, and don't worry about looking him up if you don't want to, but
Okay.
if you want to, sure. And he's kind of a philosopher, I'll say, but he takes inspiration from all kinds of religions. So maybe a spiritual teacher, I'd say philosopher. And
Okay.
he talks about in our youth, I don't know about you, but I got a bike. I learned how to ride a bike. And then like the next progression is to ride it over and off and under things
Yeah.
and with no hands and with no feet and standing on the seat and trying
Right.
to jump over the handlebars and sit on the handlebars and ride and
Yeah.
every whatever you can do with it,
Yeah.
right?
When you're young, you just riding the bike is not good enough for
Right. And
that
so
long.
he says that we put ourselves in those situations on purpose
Mm-hmm.
because that's like our nature. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then as adults, at some point we forget that we like that. Like we forget that we long for the roller coaster. And so these experiences where we get that heightened emotion and fear
Mm.
or whatever observe that this is just getting on the roller coaster. And there was a time in my life when I would do this willingly. I would subject myself to the new and uncharted and terrifying on purpose just for that experience.
Okay. So pump the brakes for a second here. So are you telling me that this Alan
Alan Watts, yes.
Alan Watts, do you think that he would hypothesize that you intentionally gave fabricators wrong information, right? Whatever led to your situation where
No,
you
no,
thought
but I choose to stay at this job. I
so
don't like
you
stock
didn't,
shelves at Kroger.
but if you so you don't think that there could be the potential that you intentionally put yourself in that situation to get that
So
feeling?
I hear what you're saying, and I would say my answer to you. This may be a little too aloof or mystical or whatever, but do I think that is my path universally? That's unavoidable. Yes. Do I think that I at any point would intentionally
Not even
strategize
subconsciously.
that result? No, I don't think so.
Not
But
even
I
subconsciously.
hear what you're saying.
That's a very
Well, they were edging on like I could go into hours of conversation about things pertaining to law of attraction, which can parallel the power of prayer and the power of positive thought and that kind of thinking, which that's a whole nother podcast.
So let Ilaria go get us Alan Watts on the show.
Yes, I'll do my best.
He might be deceased.
Oh,
So
maybe like, does he have any?
there's a ton of YouTube,
associates,
hours and hours and hours of YouTube, and and that's not this show, you know.
Yeah,
that's just a little glimpse into the philosophy behind how I managed to not go crazy doing this work.
It's interesting. So, kind of circling back to the whole had to call the superintendent thing.
Yeah.
So my advice for that,
we'll call him roller coaster from here on out.
For calling Rolly. So my advice is, and when you find out there's a problem, like, don't hide from it. Okay, you got to pick up the phone. You got to call somebody. You got to text them, email them, whatever you're going to do. Although I personally think the phone call is the best.
I knew a guy, right? Like I knew a guy that that's how he ran his business. And I worked real close with him, you know, enough to see a lot of this. And it would like the customer would call and they'd come to the shop. Instead of just saying, I blew it on scheduling, and then it's going to take me 6 more weeks or whatever, you just wouldn't tell them. And so some people, I think, operate out of that. Just don't show up, don't tell them, but make sure when you do show up, you show up with the product.
Right.
Or donuts or whatever.
Yeah, just ignore them up until you're done.
Right. If you're going to be late to work, don't bother calling in, but just make sure you have donuts.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of a method that I think some people take.
I 100% guarantee you that people take that. And I don't even know about the donuts thing, right?
No,
I think just show up with the product.
Right,
and I think people take that approach. It's like, well, I was supposed to be there today. I can't be there today because my truck broke down, whatever. And I'm not going to be able to be there for 3 days, but I'm terrified to call the customer and tell them I'm not going to make it for 3 days. So I'm just going to ignore every phone call.
We're here.
Right. Until we just show up. And like at that point, what are they going to do? You know, they're like, oh, yay, you're here. No, they're going to be pissed. Right. They're still going to be mad because you weren't there for the 3 days you were supposed to be there. And then they're even going to be more mad because you didn't tell them and you ignored them.
Yeah, I don't advise that.
I promise you, I've done it.
We started this whole podcast, I believe, episode 1. I committed to be transparent and that this journey was about transparency and that being part of our mission statement at Memphis Fence Company.
I believe based on the fact that we've sat here for 50 minutes telling people how we've screwed up. I mean, I think we're doing the whole transparency thing pretty well.
Just saying. So, well, I appreciate that because not only did I say we would, but you're now acknowledging we are. So, and that's important. And so, man, integrity and transparency, I think, are two qualities or whatever you want to call that, tenets to operate business by.
I think people, you know, I'm a pretty direct fella, right? And so I'm not really good at like beating around the bush. I'm not really good at small talk. I'm not really good at any of that stuff. And I think people appreciate that as well. But what I am good at is when someone calls me with a job that they're trying to do or whatever they're trying to do, and they have an issue that they can't like get over or get through or get around or whatever. And this may be a general contractor, maybe an architect, whatever. And they can call me and I can like help them figure out a way to get through it. Right. But I just do it in like a matter of fact way. And so if they've screwed something up, it's led them to that point, or they're continuously screwing something up, or they designed it wrong, or whatever the case may be. I mean, I just tell them. And I don't say it in like a way that beats them up, but I mean, I just kind of like tell them,
so
hey, this is how it is, right?
Speaking of design and consulting about design and that kind. You've been working with TDOT,
Yeah.
right? With something that we consider to be a problem with the specifications or some conflict with specifications.
Yeah, so we went
You
on a road trip a couple weeks ago. Um, my family and I took a vacation to East Tennessee. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Memphis is in the very southwest corner. We went over in the mountains, which is all the way in eastern Tennessee, like 8 hours away, maybe. And so we drove through Tennessee all the way there. And there's a particular TDOT standard. It normally goes on the edges of bridges, like on the bridge parapet, and it has bent post, it has 1-inch mesh, all of this stuff. And I noticed there were several of those between here and there that were not installed.
Pull over, honey.
Right.
I gotta
Stop
check
the
out
car.
this fence.
So no, I mean, I didn't do anything crazy. Like, I just noticed that there were some of them that were not installed the way that the details are
right.
on the standard. And so,
Which we did pull over on the side of the road not that long
we
ago.
did.
On the way back from an AGC lunch, we're like, stop, there
Right.
it is. Let's look at this fence.
Right. So we did. And so I just noticed that, like, it actually wasn't installed the way that the standard is. So I reached out to, I mean, it took me going through like 6 or 8 different people at TDOT, but I reached out to him and I was like, hey, the fence is actually not being installed the way that you have it drawn. And I did tell him, I said, I think the way it's being installed that doesn't meet your standards is adequate. But the way that your standards are drawn makes it really expensive.
Right.
And
we're unwilling to skimp on the specs or standards.
that's right. So
we
just
quote to standard.
We installed this type of fence. I don't know,
a few months
a
ago.
couple months. Yeah. And we did it the way it was drawn. And it's a very laborious, painstaking process to accomplish the fence the way that it's drawn.
Yes. There's like one thing is drilling that has top and bottom rail.
No, it has 4 rails.
4 rails. My bad. So
Yeah.
I had some handling in drilling the holes. 4 rails that have to be drilled at 13.5 inches or something like that on center.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Especially if your posts aren't set equal distant when you have to meet this specification of 13. I think it's 13.5, 15.5.
Something like that.
So that's just the start of it. Each hole has to have a bolt that goes through that's double nutted on the outside, which is over whatever's under the bridge.
Yeah. Remember, the
on
fence
the
is going
outside of the fence
on the bridge parapet. So the chain link fabric goes on the inside. And so the nuts then go on the outside. So you have to get in some sort of lift or something to access the outside of the fence. And, you can't just like Spider-Man crawl over there because there are safety regulations that exist in the world. And there's a TDOT inspector that's on the job site with you.
So after some digging, poking, asking, emailing, talking, you got to some kind of point of agreement or compromise with them.
So
and what was the result of that?
They came back and they said, okay, we're going to change the standard to installing it the way that it was installed everywhere else in the state. And I was like, cool, that is sufficient. I believe that's adequate, right? The thing that they wanted us to do was a crazy overkill. And so, yeah, they said, nope, you're right. It is an overkill, and we're going to reduce the standards down to what people have been doing. I don't really want to get into the whole thing of like, talking about how it was installed because we don't know the details, right? Sure. Maybe every fence that was installed, people negotiated and was like, hey, if we install it this way, we can save you a lot of money.
Yeah, if they submit a value engineered option and they went for it or whatever. Yeah. Right. But that's not our case.
Yeah. So I can't say that it was installed improperly necessarily everywhere else. I can say that it was not installed the way that
can
the
imply it though, apparently.
It wasn't installed how the standards are drawn is what we know. Now, whatever negotiations and stuff like that happened that led to it being installed the way it is, that's between them, and we don't know anything about it. But yeah, so they're changing the standards, and so that was pretty cool. And I don't know, kind of the thing about that is like it never hurts to ask, right? It never hurts to like bring it up to somebody. And
this continues on this spirit of transparency. Although that's not exactly linear, it
Yeah.
is the same thing of continuing an open line of communication with the customer.
Mm,
You can always ask, they can always say no.
right.
I mean, when we've talked about contracts, which we talked a bit about contracts today, you went to bat for us, or quote unquote, talked about the insurance requirements. They
Mm,
changed them. Went
yeah.
to TDOT, talked to TDOT about, hey man, they changed the spec on the TDOT's standard for
Yeah.
like all of this type of fence in Tennessee, basically.
Well, yeah.
So, and it's cool to just see how those can result. So, from where we go, there's one on one side of the coin. You have Colin angry roller coaster Bob, and being afraid that he's going to tell you never come back or whatever you're afraid they might say.
Yeah.
To on the other side, making these approaches and maybe making a way not just for us as Memphis Fence Company, but for other fence contractors to be able to perform this work for TDOT
Definitely.
with a reasonable process for installation.
Somebody earlier asked me, they're like, "Oh, did you get them to change the standard so in some way that only we can do it and it's better for us and all that?" And I was like, "No.
Right.
Like the way that the standard was changed makes it better for everybody
Everybody.
that's going to install that fence."
Right. So have the conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to, because there's money involved, it's easy to kind of want to keep your cards close to your chest, I think.
Yep.
And we're finding maybe this is a new era and this is new kind of conversation, or maybe it's just new to me. I've just matured and I'm willing to have it. But either way, um, you know, I advocate as much conversation as possible.
Yep.
Really.
And I found that
Unless they're the type that doesn't want any details.
right. And I found that if you kind of just like, throw yourself out there and try to get in the mix with like from a design perspective or standards perspective or whatever, um, as long as you can like establish some sort of like credibility, maybe,
Mhm.
or at least produce enough evidence of why something is not being done right, it seems like people sometimes are willing to listen.
Yeah.
You get a lot of designers that like think that they can make no mistakes. I've encountered that as well, and that's a whole different conversation. But
My I've had more that were kind of reliant on us as professionals to tell them
right,
what we thought, and that's
yep,
been really cool.
yep, me too.
And I think that's where it really starts to get fun, because when you're just exchanging ideas with a designer, like at that point, the money is not even in the picture. We're
No,
just like doing what we like to do.
and I've also experienced where I've had designers send me site plans that I redrew and sent back to them, and then some like they put the job out to bid, and someone else gets the job. Right. So there was zero monetary benefit from doing that at all, but it
Right.
was pretty fun to do.
Sure.
And it's a fun story that I can tell everybody about
On
for the
every
rest
show.
of my life. Yeah.
Every third show, we tell that story.
All right. So let's hit
Just
this
kidding,
Gantt
just
chart
kidding.
thing real quick.
Okay, I didn't know we were gonna have time.
I mean,
just kind of plugged it in at the bottom,
yeah.
just in case we get to it. Where I'm at currently, I have extended a Gantt chart to a customer. I also extended the same Gantt chart to the subcontractor who will be installing the job, just to set some expectations. Instead of really relying on them to tell me when they'll be there, basically is kind of how I've been doing it before.
Yeah.
And then I just built another one, a little bit more extensive than the first, for another contractor on a job that spans almost 3 months into, well, 2 months total. And then now I'm getting into that even, well, in that one, I'm subbing out some fabrication on that. And so I'm going to extend the same Gantt chart to the subcontractor for the fabrication, so they know what my times are, so they know how to interact with us, because on that one we'll be doing the install.
So everybody's on the same page, basically.
That's right. And now I'm going to do that for the next like 3 or 4 months for the whole shop, for all the jobs I have currently on the books. So I don't know why I've known how to and played around with this before, but we've been kind of doing okay without it. But I think for me, it's going to make my life easier.
So I want to kind of back up a little bit. So the Gantt chart thing, like we played around with it, like you said, we played around with building Gantt charts in Monday for probably the past 2 or 3 years. Right. And we've never really got to a point where we felt like we could implement it, but we're trying to do it for every project and how they like interact with one another and all of this kind of stuff. And so what Zach's doing is making a Gantt chart specific to a project.
That's right.
Giving it to the customer and everybody here so that we're all on the same page with expectations and time frames and deadlines we have to meet and all that. So this kind of started for me, like I said, we've tried to do it for years. And then we were talking to Matt Warner, and he's like, so this was his thing was like, man, if you're going to give him a schedule, it needs to be in a Gantt chart. And he says general contractors operate based on Gantt charts. Any schedule that you ever get for a commercial project, general contractor commercial project, they're always on Gantt charts. And so I'd never really like thought about that, right? And so we talked on the show before about how I like to have a schedule as a part of my submittal package. And that maybe is material procurement, installation, fabrication, if we're doing it, coding, like just kind of break it down into however many steps you need to, just so that you are turning in like what you think your schedule is going to be to complete the project. And so what I've done in the past is basically just like make a list and just put like, 10 days, 12 days, 20 days, 300 days, like whatever the days are for each of those steps, and just kind of send that in with it. And, but yeah, I liked his point of using the Gantt chart versus doing that, because general contractors understand that, right? That's their language that they speak in. Like I said, all of their schedules are Gantt charts. Anytime you get a contract, or a lot of times when you're bidding a job on the front end, there will be Gantt charts in there for sure. By the time you get a contract, it's very common that you see them. If you're not familiar with a Gantt chart, you can look up on Google or whatever. It's GANTT is how you spell it. And it's kind of like a sideways chart, bar graph, sorry, where it just kind of has like little lines that show you each step along the way. And you can get really sophisticated with them, where you can put like dependencies in there. There's software out there people use to build Gantt charts. There's all kinds of stuff. You can do it in Excel. What did you make yours in?
I used Canva.
Canva? Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have to do like get the software that's made for Gantt charts or anything. Like I said, Excel can do it. Monday can do them. So you made yours in Canva. That's just like blocks, or was it a template? Or
it was a template. I
Yeah.
mean, you could easily do it in Word if you just made a table,
right?
and draw lines. It's a pretty simple concept.
Yep. But I really like the idea of the Gantt chart versus just listing out how long stuff would take, or kind of like putting it on a calendar or whatever.
What was the project management software that you demoed or bought and decided not to use recently?
Well, so I got a free account on HubSpot.
No, it was crud.
How long ago?
I don't know, 3 months, 6 months ago.
Oh, Job Nimbus?
Job Nimbus.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think Job Nimbus had a plugin, or you had an option to show your job as a Gantt chart.
Oh, really?
You could view it as a Gantt chart. I'm pretty sure there were Gantt charts available there for a project schedule.
I know they had a lot of stuff in like the Kanban, whatever. I don't know how you say that word.
Kanban.
So I think Job Nimbus is solid. It didn't work for us because of one little piece of the way that we do our accounting. And so it like broke the QuickBooks integration, but I do think it's pretty solid. So just to be clear about that. But yeah, I think Gantt charts are cool. And it's something, like I said, man, we talked about that stuff before you were here, but we've never really been able to pull off.
And I kind of feel like a dummy because I'm doing it now and like, oh, it's so great. But it was so easy. That's the thing. And I don't know why I didn't do it before,
Yeah.
Basically, what I've been doing is drawing a Gantt chart on a desk calendar.
Yeah, right.
For the most part.
Right. We're just putting it in a calendar view, not the Gantt chart view.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, I'm using that version in Outlook already.
Mm-hmm.
And the data exists. So to put that data into a Gantt chart is not that difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've made 5 or 6.
Yeah.
All surrounding these couple of projects for various different parts of the project to extend to different people involved in the project. And it's easy.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it. actually. I mean, that's the funny thing. I don't know about the functionality of it just yet, but as far as the process of making one, it was pleasant.
Yeah.
You know?
So what I like about the one in Monday was if you put like dependencies between your stuff, then if you say you had 4 days for fabrication, right? And it took you 6, when you drug it, right? Because you could just click on the little bar and drag the end of it from
Right.
4 to 6, it would shift everything after that
Sure.
because of the dependencies. So I do think there would be some benefit of having like a software that was kind of built for it. It's going to make it a little bit more user friendly, but you don't have to have anything that you're not already using or that you don't have free access to.
It looks like Excel does it off
Yep.
the rip. So I would imagine Sheets, if Excel does it, you know Sheets does it. I
Yep.
mean, so, and Sheets is free and easy to use, and there's 1,000 YouTubes. I've been learning to do various functions in Excel and Sheets simultaneously just by searching YouTube of what I'm trying to do, and there you go.
Yep.
So all this stuff that we talk about is not unique to either one of us. I don't feel like I have, some high level operational understanding of a computer. In fact, I think probably 2023, when I started here, my computer skills were relatively low. So,
yep. And then you got there, man. You got there.
Right. So just to extend that to anyone who's thinking, I don't know a whole lot about computers, I'm a pen and paper kind of guy, and I always have been. I mean, it sure has elevated my ability to do my job.
So that's interesting. I would almost guarantee you that there are Gantt chart like whiteboards that you can buy on Amazon that probably have
We
some
looked at one.
Yeah.
We did.
Like
It was
magnetic strips or something like that
yeah,
you
the
could
one
like
I
build
wanted
it
was
with.
like $3,000, remember?
Because it was like a whole kit,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. It was like the 12,000 piece kit or something.
Yeah, Lynn and I talked. Lynn, one of our other employees that I talked to about making one out of poster board and strips of construction paper.
Right. So you can do it like analog if you want.
She and I were kind of like, that would be fun.
Yeah.
It's
Arts and
tactile.
crafts.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
obviously we didn't. I was like, Dan would lose his mind if he came in here and we were cutting up strips of construction paper and,
for like 3 days
or whatever. So.
Could probably just get some out of the shredder.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I'm using Gantt charts currently. So I'm not technically working on, but expounding on the experience or the knowledge or skill set of using them. And in addition to that, my critique of myself this week has been to inspect what I expect. I mentioned the forms that I've been extending to the shop and to follow up on those forms and not assume that just because I've extended the task, it's going to be complete or complete well. And that I'm realizing I need to be more involved throughout the process. And that's where, an area I've been kind of negligent in.
Yep. I was going to say there's a handful of Gantt chart templates that are just
available in Excel.
I was going to say that earlier, the inspect what you expect about your checklist and your forms and stuff like that. And I forgot about it.
Inspect what you expect.
Yep.
Extend the expectation and then follow up with the inspectation.
Yeah.
We make up words here on this show.
Frequently.
Sometimes they sound like Italian.
Yeah. Yeah, these are all actually just fake Italian words.
Now it's time for fake Italian with Ilaria.
That would be fun too. We need fake Italian. So she just makes up words that sound like they're Italian.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
Ilaria, thank you for hosting the show for us and holding it down behind the screen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining, listening, watching, whatever you do, however you interact with PowerHouse Fence or however you interact with Fence.
Yeah.
We like that, apparently. We made a whole show about it.
Yeah. So I guess we do. We sit up here late at night and talk about Fence.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Oh, so thanks everybody for listening. I don't know, in the past couple of weeks, I've encountered some people that, said thanks.
Cool.
And that was pretty cool. So I think I shared some.
No, thank you.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Cool. We'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.